Hello, good evening. Thank you for attending tonight's Real Talk segment about topics and donation. I would like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Sam Day. Sam is a blessed and grateful heart recipient who received the ultimate gift on April the 20th, 2015, his donor hero, from his donor hero. He was transplanted at the University of Maryland Medical Center in Baltimore. Sam's mission is to pay it forward to the organ transplantation and donor communities. He worked closely with the two organ procurement organizations, OPOs, in the greater Washington, Maryland areas as a Donate Life ambassador to raise awareness for organ, eye, and tissue donation. Sam continues to honor his donor and donor family through his works in the community. Now, I would like to introduce once again Sam Day as our moderator for this evening. Thank you, Sam, for joining us tonight. You have the floor.
Thank you, Latrice. Good evening, everybody. Great you could join us. So today, like Latrice said, we're here to talk about this new episode on Real Talk, and today's episode is about the role of funeral directors as it relates to saving lives through organ, eye, and tissue donation. So as you know, it's really important to me as being a recipient. That's my passion and mission in life, to spread the word and awareness. So I'd like to welcome our three special guests today, and I'm going to introduce them one by one. So first we have Brandon Wiley. Welcome, Brandon. So Brandon is a native of Baltimore. He graduated from Fayetteville Technical Community College with a degree in mortuary science and funeral service education in 1999. Later that year, he became the youngest licensed mortician in the state of Maryland and the third youngest ever in the country. Professionally, he is the CEO of Wiley Funeral Homes, PA, with locations in Baltimore City and Baltimore County. Welcome, Brandon. Next, we have Kendra Harris. Kendra joined the Living Legacy Foundation of Maryland, also we know that as LLF, in 2009 as a funeral home medical examiner liaison, where she is directly responsible for overseeing the development, coordination, and execution of the LLF's programmatic efforts to increase and raise awareness for organ, eye, and tissue donation, specifically with funeral homes, medical examiner partners. And prior to joining the LLF, she worked as a licensed funeral director herself in Silver Spring, Maryland. And finally, we have Jeffrey Gadeau. Growing up on the Eastern Shore, Jeffrey graduated from Chesapeake Christian School in May of 2011 as valedictorian of his class. He later attended Chesapeake College starting in the fall of 2011 and transferred to the Community College of Baltimore County in the fall of 2012. There, he graduated in August of 2014 with a degree in applied mortuary science. He has been a licensed mortician with the state of Maryland since November of 2014, and he joined the LLF in 2019 as donor services coordinator. So welcome, all three of you. So it's really good to be here. Kendra, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your role at the LLF?
Sure. As you spoke, I joined the Living Legacy Foundation in 2009 prior to being a licensed funeral director. So a little bit about the role here. The role was started to basically maintain and cultivate the relationships with our funeral home partners and our medical examiner's office. My role specifically is to pretty much raise awareness about organ, eye, and tissue donation, and keep the Living Legacy and keep our funeral homes informed of a lot of our programs that we have going on here, so that they are able to participate in those programs.
Awesome, great, thank you. So Brandon, welcome again. What made you become a funeral director?
Hey, Sam. Well, it was a little bit of just watching my dad. I'm a second generation funeral director. So my dad was very inspirational to me, and just watching him and the way he always had a delicate hand when he dealt with families, and how I watched him take families from a period of grief and transform that grief into inspiration. And, that through a ceremony. And that ceremony, he just was very elaborate and intricate in it. And, I just fell in love with it, just watching him do it. And then, it was never pressured into the situation. It was just something I wanted to do because I wanted to understand and celebrate people and help bridge that gap between grief and acceptance.
Of course. So can you tell us a little bit how you, these days you're involved with the LLF? So if you could just elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, I've right now I serve on the governing board. I just was elected the vice president of the governing board, but I just it's very inspirational to me. It's become part of my life. I think I've been here for at least about 20, feels like about 20 years, you know. So it's been a while. You know, I was one of the first funeral directors to ever serve on the board, and you know, just to give that type of guidance and inspiration, you know, they really changed my perspective of procurement and organ donation and dealing with families on an everyday basis. You know, from a funeral director, you know, I used to tell families like, hey, you know, maybe this is not some way you should go, but never did I understand until I became a board member of Living Legacy, that the value of organ procurement and the value of donation and how many people's lives it can save, especially just hearing about you, Sam. You know, we just would think about the work we had to do in the preparation room, but it's about more than that. It's about saving people's lives and controlling the myths that people feel every day, you know.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Brandon. Hey, Jeffrey, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
So good. I'm good. Thank you. So can you tell us a little bit about your role at the LLF, and also tell us, you know, what made you work there? You know, what made you want to work there?
Sure, absolutely. So my role at the LLF over the last probably year and a little over a year, I have been working on the tissue side of our organization, where I'm receiving, coordinating and screening potential donors for for skin and bone, cornea donation. Most recently, I'm currently in training. I've kind of transferred over to our organ side of things, where I'm working with other OPOs or organ procurement organizations like LLF around the United States, as well as with transplant surgeons and other coordinators and many different other aspects of the Living Legacy Foundation and other, from other departments there, where we're actually coordinating and receiving organs for recipients like you, Sam, across the state of Maryland.
Great. Awesome. So just a little program note. I mean, I know this event is being carried live on Facebook and YouTube. So I'd request everybody to type in your questions in the comment section, and we'll get to them, you know, right after, as soon as possible. So Kendra, can you tell us why having these strong relationships and with funeral directors like Brandon and others is so important to the donation process?
Sure. Having strong relationships with our funeral directors is very important because it helps to open the lines of communication with our funeral directors. And just as Brandon said earlier about being on the board, you know, he didn't know a lot about the organization before he became a part of it. So that's my role, is to educate our funeral directors, and having that liaison role helps to open those lines of communication. It helps me understand the funeral director's position, and it helps the funeral director to understand the Living Legacy's position on organ and tissue donation. It also helps to answer any questions that the funeral director may have. I'm that contact person. So there's that one go-to person that the funeral home can go to just to answer any questions or challenges or issues that they may have. So the role is very important, just to open those lines of communication.
Great. So Brandon and other directors have your number on speed dial at all times.
Yes, they do. I have all the funeral homes, most of the funeral homes in my phone. So
good.
They
So
call me anytime.
Thanks for that, Kendra. So Brandon, on the flip side, I mean, you know Kendra, and she's obviously been in similar role as you before and all that. So how does it, work out having a liaison like her on the other side to support donation?
Well, it's very instrumental to have Kendra to serve as the liaison, because it's a lot of it helps solve the communication problem. Because sometimes, you know, when we first get a call from a family, you know, and we call a hospital and we find out that there's a hold by Living Legacy, we can communicate with Kendra directly, and we can say, hey, the family hasn't been contacted. We don't want them to be fearful that there's something going on behind their back. This is just a natural occurrence. This is what happens because your loved one may have had a designation on their license, or may have made a designation to a hospital staff. So having Kendra there just to solve those problems and work with the family and get in touch with the call center so those people can get in contact with the family, it really helps give them some comfort because they're really distraught after their loss.
Great, great. So, I'm Jeffrey. Back to you for a second. So I know, donor directors like Brandon and everybody at LLF work with donor families. Have you been able to? Had you worked with donor families in the past?
Yes, and actually to go back a little bit, prior to my previous role at LLF, when I worked in the funeral home, the day-to-day operations, I did, communicate heavily with Kendra. I knew her very well. I did continuing education with her. So I did have that kind of relationship that she was discussing with her, which she helped out a lot, with the funeral homes to, piggyback with Brandon. But yes, I have served several different families at my time. I was in the funeral home business for about 8 to 10 years. When the families come into the funeral home, a donor family, it's kind of unreal as a funeral director because you see the family come in, experiencing the most difficult time in their life. And most of the donor families, not all, but 90% of them come in and they have a sense of like calmness or comfort already. And, they start to come in and they start talking about, the 24-hour grief support or the flag raising ceremony or the walk of remembrance that the hospital does for, their donor family, all the pieces that Living Legacy to those donor families. And it's that type of background and comfort that I think gives that family that comfort and that peace, even though they're experiencing that time in their life, and that gift of donation, I think helps them kind of with that there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a tough job, and you guys at LLF, I think about you because in my situation, I keep thinking back to the donor family, how they would have felt on the worst day of their life, and here it was all about giving a gift of life to somebody like me, and I'm here today. So so we know this means a lot to many different people, and we're so grateful to everybody who's involved with organ donation, transplantation, and thankful for people to make it possible. So one of the groups that provides guidance for this sort of stuff in the LLF is the governing board, like Kendra and Brandon, you're both on. Can you tell us a little bit about the governing board and how they support LLF? Kendra, you go first, and then Brandon can chime in, please.
Sure. So the governing board is comprised of medical professionals. We have transplant recipients on the board, donor family members, and community members, just as Brandon. And just as you stated, Sam, their role is to provide guidance to Living Legacy services and programs.
Great. Brandon, how about you? How is it being on the governing board, and what sort of guidance and things that are able to provide?
Well, the governing board is just like Kendra said, it's doctors. It's a lot of different perspectives on the governing board. That way we can have it feels like as they're giving us the information, we can work with that information to come up with different events, make sure that we're hitting our targets, make sure we're hitting our goals, make sure that families feel secure with their donation, and make sure that we have enough community involvement all the way around. From the fun runs to different events that we do. But we have to make sure that we keep our family first and our donor families first. And that's what this governing board is about, just making sure that we connect all of the dots and everybody is covered.
Right,
yeah, and I think that, the governing board, you want to make sure that, it's very diverse, which it is. Like Brandon said, different perspectives, just to make sure that we are hitting our targets. So that's very important.
Great. And Jeffrey, what have you heard about the governing board?
So I know a little bit about the governing board. They're here to, like Kendra said, kind of piggyback off of that. We have multiple people that plays the aspect. So you don't just have that one, person from a medical professional, or you don't just have that one transplant recipient. You have, multiple people that are helping decide and play a role. And right. I think ultimately what it takes, to have a fair, playing board there.
Great, great. So just another reminder, everybody, please go ahead and put your questions in the chat, and we'll get to them either YouTube or Facebook Live. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about one of the concerns that we hear a lot, and being you guys are all involved with organ donation, tissues, and eyes. It's about at the time of when the person is deceased, whether or not open casket funerals are allowed or even possible. So is it still, I believe it is, but I'd like you guys to comment, is it still possible after someone donates, whether it's skin or anything like that, even organs, whether they're able to have open casket? Brandon, I'll let you go first here, please.
Not a problem, Sam. Well, during the organ procurement process, there are some organs that are taken from their loved one. But as far as for the visitation, for the viewing, for the funeral, most families should focus more on the face and the hands. And so since those faces are always visible, and so you'll always have the ability to have a visitation. You'll always be able to have a funeral. But the most important thing about it is by taking that opportunity to take part in the donation process, you're going to save someone's life. And I think that is truly the gift there. You will still have all the presentation value that you need so that your loved one can be celebrated, so their life can be lived. But that donation process, that is key. You have to give the donation of life, and that's where you should focus on, because your loved one has made that decision.
Right. Kendra, could you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah, we do. We do hear those comments from time to time that, we may not be able to have an open casket funeral. But again, as Brandon stated, that is something that is still possible. And that's, pretty much my role as well. If the funeral home has a question about, some of our processes or our procedures, recovery, I'm there to answer those questions, and also some of our staff members that participate in the tissue recovery process. So we kind of all work together on that role. And if there is ever a question from our funeral directors, then I'm there to answer that question, because we do, respectfully reconstruct the donor. Everything is respectfully done. And so that's, and you asked that question about the importance of the liaison role. So that is one of the important parts of the liaison role, is to work with the funeral director and be able to answer those questions about the donation process.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's so important to be coordinated. So Jeffrey, I know you mentioned you worked a lot with the donor families. So from your perspective, I know Brandon and Kendra probably addressed most of the things, but do you also hear from? You obviously do hear from families, and what do you tell them, and how do you put them at ease?
Absolutely. So one of the big roles, I do work in the donor service center, so that is ultimately where our telephone hub of Living Legacy, where a lot of families will call in, our funeral homes will call in if they don't have Kendra's phone number directly, and we'll patch them out to them. But one of the things we want to respect at Living Legacy is the gift of donation is very special to a family. And if a family chooses to see their loved one, or choose that method of disposition following, and they want to see their loved one one final time, or they want to have the community see their loved one one final time, we also want to respect that. And there we can use things like prosthetics, like Kendra had mentioned, which gives the person a more wholesome appearance there. We also, I work closely in the donor service center with our family advocates, our FSCs, who are speaking directly with those families about authorization for donation. And I know after, with my relationship with them, they heavily, during the authorization process, it's something that's heavily discussed with the family, about viewings and, myths and those types of things they do. It's part of the authorization process there. And, I know Kendra and Brandon will agree, even cornea donation, a lot of people myth that cornea donation, Brandon talked about the face, you're focusing on the face, but even with cornea donation, that has no impact on your loved one viewing your loved one there. So I know it's always they connect to purpose there with that.
That's great, because with tissue donation, over 75 lives can be, enhanced or saved. And so it's amazing that it's possible to have even open caskets and things like that. So, and it's so meaningful to know that funeral directors and can play such an important role in donations. So Kendra, since you've been in this role for so long, I mean, I just wanted to ask you, have you seen it evolve? Have you seen it grow or change in any way?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, I've been here since 2009. And so when I first started, I was coming from being a funeral director. So I was coming from that side of it and, transitioning into the organ and tissue side of it. And so at that point, it was just, educating our funeral directors and making sure that they understood what organ and tissue donation was. And so now, I've seen it grow to where we have a lot of our funeral homes are very, very active with Living Legacy. They're participating, in our programs, our fun runs, outreach tables, raising the flag during Donate Life Month. And so I've really seen it grow, and, it's wonderful. I'm very happy.
Yeah, I mean, I know all about, spreading the word, and that's how I pay it forward to, whether it's, speaking or doing shows like this or anything like that. So Brandon, I want to ask you the same thing. You must have seen the role evolve and grow and change. So could you comment?
Yes. Yes. The role of Living Legacy definitely changed, and I can just say for myself the change that I felt when I first joined. It was almost like a Paul going to Damascus moment, where I realized that I had just had to go in a different direction, and I had to try to lead and educate other funeral directors and other morticians that it's not a time consuming process. It doesn't add more time to the embalming process. What this is, it's a part about giving life, and you have to be the communicator because the family respects the funeral director. They come to the funeral director because they believe in you. So because of that belief, you have influence. And if you can influence the family to let them know that this process is not going to be a place of mutilation, your loved one will still have be able to be viewed, and then you have the support of the liaison, Kendra, to validate those things. And that is crucial as a funeral director. If you are educated, and LLF continues to educate us through the different social events that they have, where they invite funeral directors, where they invite churches and ministers, and they sit us around the table. And I've been there. I've watched them do it as a member of the board, where they actually tell us what procurement is about, and they teach.
Right.
That's the key. You have to be able to teach so that the public can understand the process, because we all hear the myths because they're everywhere, but we don't hear the education. And
Right.
that's what LLF is about, giving the education to the community.
Awesome. Yeah, LLF, I've had good experience with LLF too, and one word comes to mind. It's honor. So I think all of you will agree. It's all about honoring the donor family. I myself and others as recipients, all we're doing is trying to honor. We're trying to live the best life we can. All of those things is just for honoring the donor and obviously our loved ones and things like that. But it's a big part of LLF and all you funeral directors like Brandon, Jeffrey, all of you. So at this time, we will, hopefully there are some questions, and we'll take some questions from the audience. So thank you very much, guys. And I'm sure you'll be involved in answering some of the questions. So what type of educational events can funeral homes assist with?
So we have a lot of outreach programs. We do a lot of tables where we're sitting out at hospitals or out in the community. They can assist with those type of educational programs. You can always contact me, and I can find some educational programs to do. But a lot of outreach opportunities that we have, they're able to assist with.
Okay, great.
Sam, if real quick, I just want to say
absolutely.
that as we talked about before we got into the broadcast, we're having an event on Sunday, and the first thing I thought about was to have Living Legacy bring some flyers, bring a flag so that we can have it out there, because we're going to be touching about 700 people through a Thanksgiving basket drive, and LOF has to be a part. So whenever we do something, we have to have that educational information there.
Absolutely. And Brandon, I was going to ask you anyway. So you do have other events and stuff to spread the awareness from your perspective, from the funeral director side.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Whenever we have an event, whether it's from a staff cookout to something as large as a Thanksgiving basket on for serving Sundays, all of our events will have Live a Legacy educational material there.
Great. I mean, it's so important, especially in our region, to dispel all sorts of myths and things like that, so appreciate all that you guys do. So what state or national funeral home organizations are affiliated with funeral homes and donation? I guess, Brandon, you can try that maybe first. You want me to read the question again?
I think maybe like the National Funeral Directors Association is a national organization that's affiliated. And then we have our local, our Maryland State Funeral Directors Association. You also have the National Funeral Directors and Morticians Association. So those three organizations, and there may be a few more that, Brandon, I don't know if you can comment, but I know those three are associations.
I can also comment on that too. And I know Kendra has given presentations. I was a member, or I still am a member of the Delmarva Funeral Directors Association, which is Maryland, Delaware, and Virginia funeral directors. I was actually the past secretary and treasurer. I know Kendra also did a presentation, so I know locally that's another,
Also,
one there.
There is Tri-County Funeral Directors Association. I've worked with them as well. We've done educational events with Tri-County. And so
great. So there's a lot, and there's a lot of people working together, basically.
I will also say, I'll add to that too. Anytime, if your funeral home wants more education, or you want, anything about donation, like Kendra said, you can always contact the Living Legacy, and we'd be honored to send someone out or come out and speak to your group and give a presentation for that. We're all, we are all about that. We have a whole education department at the Living Legacy, so we're very geared for that.
And we're doing virtual education as well. So that's education is still possible. We can do it virtually. So we're working. Yes, yep. It is. So we're working on that as well. Also, great. And I know also I'll add, I work with Maryland State Funeral Directors Association as well. So we have done some continuing education credits, putting some courses online where funeral directors can take those courses for credit. So just that's another opportunity. Yeah.
Let's see. Do we have any other questions coming in? Here's one. How can the community help our funeral homes understand the process? So I'm sure through all these events and things like that, but how specifically can our community do more things and help the funeral homes understand the process, so they're not confused about anything like this?
I guess it's pretty much just the education, working through me and through the Living Legacy Foundation, contacting us. Like I said, we always have opportunities for education and learning about the donation process. Like I said, via live, we can do that as well. So there's always opportunities. Just probably contact myself.
Right. And like Brandon was saying, his event on Sunday will, spread the word too. And with those flyers, and if it wasn't COVID, there'd be other events, a lot more, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because in the past, I used to go to different community events, and you would see Latrice and Kendra and Aisha, all of them. They'll be there with their table set up, the banner flying. They have a spin wheel that they do that interact with guests that's going on. So they're very interactive with the community. And just by them being in the community helps the community recognize when they have to be prepared to actually make a decision on donation. Because they may not know when their loved one has it on designated on their license. They may not know. So being as though when they hear the name Living Legacy from their community event, it resounds in their mind, and they said, oh, I can put two and two together. And then Kendra's educated the funeral director on his end, so he knows how to communicate with the family. So it's all about education and connecting each other through communication.
Right, of course.
And I'll also add to that.
Sure.
The question was, I don't know if you can pop that back up there.
Yeah.
So the community, with the community, we also, just to tie a little bit off of that, we're also volunteers. If the community wants, we have a volunteer background. I know Sam's aware of that. Kendra can speak a little bit on that because she's in the community outreach department. But Adam, our volunteers coordinator, we're always welcome. There's a series of like presentations we give, kind of a little bit of training to help you, before you go out and volunteer there. So we're always for volunteers at the Living Legacy, to spread and educate people. And
Yeah, like I said, I mean, before COVID, it was a lot different, but we do go out a lot and have tables and setups and speak a lot more and spread the word and educate people. Let's see, is there other questions coming up? I can't see any yet. So
I'll ask one to Kendra. Being I went to the Community College of Baltimore County for mortuary school. I know we have a great partnership with them. If you want to talk a little bit about that too for our funeral.
Yes, I was just going to talk about that as well. Yes, so we do have a good relationship with our mortuary college here in Maryland. I do know the director, Brian Burke. We worked well on several occasions where I've had speakers to go out to the college and speak. I've had some of the students to actually come to Living Legacy to learn a little bit more about, who we are and what we do, because I think it's really important when you're in mortuary school to learn about the organ and tissue donation process. Because I will say, when I was in mortuary school, that's not something that I learned about. And so I think it's very important to educate our upcoming mortuary science students who are one day going to be funeral directors, and they're going to work with families, and they're going to have to come in contact with organ and tissue donation. So that's something that, I felt that was very important when I did start in this role, to work with our mortuary science students. So looking forward to doing more with them, hopefully virtually. But it is very, very important to work with them.
absolutely, you guys do so much more. I mean, just being a funeral director is, such an important job, and then now keeping that whole donation aspect, incorporating that is just even a bigger job and duty, to really you help a lot of people. So really appreciate
you play many roles when you're a funeral director. You're not
exactly.
just a funeral director, but you're a counselor, and you're sometimes a pastor. You're sometimes
right.
you play
a little bit of everything.
Yes. Social worker, you're everything. So you play a lot of different roles.
So Brandon, going back to your dad's time, was it like this at all? I mean, the whole funeral director being so close with an OPO working like this?
Oh, no, sir, not at all. Like I said, during my dad's time, and even first starting out, we didn't even know, there wasn't even a process on good practice on how you would bring a donor case, how you bring them back to lifelike form through the embalming process. So, just having Kendra talk to the students at CCBC is amazing, because of the fact that she can educate them, and they don't have to come up with a process on their own, but they can create great good practices for embalming, from just Kendra having an opportunity to educate them. And so I don't even think in the African American community there were enough donors even at the time to even cause my father to even be stirred by the situation, but I believe that there has been an increase, and I believe that is because of Living Legacy and because of the education that they have and the outreach that they've done to the community, that we have seen an uptick in donor cases, so it's a blessing.
Right, definitely. I mean, I've also noticed, I'm active on social, and I've talked to people who said, you couldn't even tell a difference, and we knew that maybe they donated tissue or organs in some cases, but you can't even tell the difference, right? It's just like
You can't, Sam, and I think that a lot of that is because of the new practices they use as far as the prosthetics. You
Right.
know, everything from the recovery procedures, everything has changed, and we've watched it evolve and grow. You know, and even offering even support for leakage from the from LOF. It's been tremendous. The change just keeps happening, and they just keep getting better and better.
Right.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, as far as like Brandon saying, the communication process and going back to the role of the liaison. And, when there is a challenge with the funeral home, if there are challenges, the family's upset about something, then I'm able to work directly with that funeral home to say, what could we have done better? Or, what do we need to do next time? Or, so it's that direct communication and making sure that we're, continually working with the funeral home and the families, and just making sure that the funeral homes have what they need for the preparation process.
Of course. Great.
And if we don't, we just call Kendra.
Yeah, so
Yes,
that's a good segue, Kendra. So for everybody watching tonight, where can they reach out if they have questions about everything that we've discussed, or anything related to donation? Where can they go? Is there a website or anything like that they can?
Actually, yeah, you can go to our website, the LLF.org, and contact me there.
Okay, and I think we're going to flash it on the screen. There it is, right there. So
There it is.
LLF.org, and it's on Facebook. There's website everywhere. I mean, LLF is everywhere, right? And I mean, we're talking so much about funeral homes, directors, and organ donation. I just get emotional every time I hear the word donation, because what it means to me. So I just want to really say thank you to all of you for doing what you do every day, in and out, and it is making a difference. As you know, the transplant list is over 100, probably 9 or 10,000 now, and we definitely do need the donors. We want everybody to register. It made a difference with living donors, that's for sure, and keep spreading the word, even through your roles, like I will, for sure. And I want to thank the audience for joining us tonight and for participating. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to go to llf.org. Keep typing your questions, and somebody will definitely answer them. So with that, I just want to say again, thank you very much. And I'm grateful to my donor and all donors, and also respect to all those who have lost their lives for COVID. And stay safe, everybody. Take care.